because when you think of somebody recording music, you sort of think of them as recording it and then making it sound good in their mind, and then sending it out. Hello and welcome to the first edition of Dave Mind. This is Dave and this is my mind. I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of the series. And Dave Mind really does cover things that happen in my mind. And when I first came up with this idea of a random video podcast / videocast, it really was confusing to me where I should take it, because there have been so many things that went on in my mind and in my life, so many things that were in wildly different directions, that to come up with one idea and stick with it was very difficult. So consequently, we're not going to really focus on just one topic. I thought about doing an audio, video type thing, a music type thing, or a fitness type thing, but this is going to cover it all. Dave Mind will cover everything from health and fitness, workplaces and love, and food and travel, and engineering and science and music and everything. So we want to make sure that we have an accurate coverage of the things that I like to read about, I like to study about, and perhaps most importantly, the things I like to argue about. Because really, at the end of the day, it comes down to having a solid opinion. So we're going to make that happen here in Dave Mind. I'd like to thank Derek Rogers, my dear friend, for putting together that amazing video spot you saw at the beginning. And you'll see that quite a bit because it's going to be used a lot. And I'd also like to thank many people along the way who have kind of given me that extra kick in the ass I needed to start something like this. Rob Stark, my brother Mark, Brent Singleton, who is just a phenomenal camera guy, and a whole bunch of other people. But let's get started. In 2010, I graduated from Purdue University in Indiana, where I majored in aviation technology and management. But I tell people that, in reality though, for the most part, I was actually involved with music. And that was a big part of my life, probably more than academia, as much as I hate to admit that. My friends and I ran a music venue, actually called The Venue, which, not the most creative name, but we did have some amazing times there. Hosted hundreds of bands, and also had quite the experience with our own group called Springload. And back in the Springload days, the only way we could find places to practice was by, knowing people who had places we could practice, renting out cold storage areas. I remember being like 19 years old and my fingertips were bright blue because we were playing in the middle of the winter and I just could not get the blood flowing to my hands. So I said, forget this, we can't do it, So somewhere along the line, and someone suggested the fact that you should look into this place called Downtown Records in downtown Lafayette because they're actually closing their doors. But being in Lafayette, Indiana, the rent wasn't extraordinarily high like it is in, the Northeast. So we thought to ourselves, maybe if we pooled some of our extra side money, throwing some pennies into the pot, we could actually scrap together enough change to run this place ourselves. And that's actually exactly what happened. We got a few people to help us out. And through its ups and downs, we had a great run. In the venue, my primary job was running sound. And I remember we had a whole bunch of dynamic microphones, just like Shure SM58s and 57s and things like that. And of course some crappy ones too. But we had this big snake we coiled up and we routed all through the walls into the mixing board, which was like in the back of the venue, facing 90 degrees away from the stage. So I joke that like I have a stiff neck permanently because of that, because there was many nights, hundreds of nights where I was like this, mixing like here and looking down at the band like that and trying to get a sound and mix it properly. But the point was, I learned so much about music technology and how to properly get a balance of sounds and how to avoid feedback when the guy's throwing the microphone and how to get a guitar amp to distort just right and this and that and blah, 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 and how to deal with people who are fighting with you, literally. There was a lot of stuff that went along with learning in that environment. So getting back to what I studied in school, I always joke, like my biggest education came from that gross venue where we had the bands and we had the fights and we had the music and we had the parties. That was where I learned most of my stuff. So fast forward back to 2010 when I graduated and I got back to my parents' house in upstate New York. I really didn't know what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to. A lot of people, especially who graduate from college these days. After all, we are the millennial generation. We're supposed to be confused and idiots, basically, right? And I was just a statistic, I thought. So I did what came naturally to me. I applied to a bunch of different jobs that had to do with, music technology and recording. And I got a hit. I went to KMA Music in Manhattan for an interview, and KMA was located in the Brill Building, which is just on the southern end of the Broadway area, Broadway district, really, at the north end of Times Square. And the Brill Building is a very famous songwriting venue. In other words, people who have had offices there. It's kind of like the Tin Pan Alley headquarters for the old American Songbook, which was really kind of cool to walk through the hallways and you see, like Dizzy Gillespie and all this, because that's where they were, that's where they all practiced and stuff like that. So it's like really kind of cool. I went up to the interview on the 6th floor, and I got the job. Now, granted, I was just an intern, which translation, you're basically the guy that gets the coffee, So first day on the job, I walk in all excited, all bushy-tailed, and it was like, bam, go get us some coffee, go get us some food, here's a credit card. The salad's too cold, the salad's too warm, the coffee's too cold, the coffee's too warm, so basically I was just like, screw this. Really quickly I decided this was terrible, But then my mental voice kind of kicked in, and this would come back to haunt me in good and bad ways many, many years later in different avenues of life. My mental voice said, stop. You're here because you want to be here, And I remember thinking, okay, I have to do this. The point is, at KMA Music, I learned so much about professional recording that when I came back home up to Albany, I brought that with me. So combined with the venue, combined with KMA Music, there was so much information at my disposal, I guess, in my mind as to what I would do at home. Okay, first of all, in a professional environment like KMA Music, there's a whole bunch of things going on that you really can't do at home. First of all, the biggest thing, in my opinion, is that you have a bunch of different minds working together. You had Claude Kelly writing, you had the session musicians, you had professional recording engineers mixing it, and the auxiliary guys like myself throwing in their 2 cents that probably didn't matter. And of course, you had the whole venue, the people who ran the place, all looking out for you. In terms of the equipment, obviously it's superior equipment. In terms of the vibe, obviously it's a superior vibe. How can you beat it? It's a professional studio. Of course, we're talking about studios that cost $10 million. We're not talking about ones that you buy from a garage sale or eBay. So on the flip side of things, why should somebody purchase a home recording studio if they could just spend the same amount of money to rent out a professional studio? And this is really the real question. All right, first of all, in my opinion, if you're a musician who's gotten to the point of recording, you should be able to get through it without a million takes, and starting and stopping and starting and stopping and stop. It's like it drives me crazy. That's like one pet peeve I have with music. It's like if you're going to record, at least make sure you're ready to record, right? The home studio, though, kind of gets rid of all that anxiety because you can do unlimited takes. This is kind of good and bad because it's good on the fact that, well, nobody cares if I'm down here for 12 hours. I don't have to pay by the hour or pay some guy, daily. But it's also bad because it makes people become kind of complacent, right? I mean, what's the point of practicing if you have unlimited takes? It's like, what's the point of getting good at a video game if you had unlimited lives, right? So, good and bad from both sides of the spectrum. One of the other reasons why home recording differs substantially from professional recording environments is actually your ability to control your own sound. And I think this has been a huge factor, a huge motivating factor too, for a lot of indie musicians to get good at recording at home, because it's a lot easier to tweak your stuff by yourself or with your band in some basement than it is to hire a guy and convince him how you want your recording to sound. And with this comes a whole bunch of skills that you have to learn, but with that learning comes intelligence, it comes knowledge, it comes experience, and really it actually makes you a better musician. So I would say that home recording makes people better musicians, but it's at a price. On the flip side of things, you could shortcut that and say, I want to work with a guy who's got 30 years of experience mixing down on a mixing console at the studio. Okay, well, that's pretty cool, but you're going to have to pay for that. What if they say, I don't care. I have all the money in the world, I can just piss it away. Okay, be my guest. You can go do that. It still might not sound as good as if you did it yourself, right? Of course, you could also rent it out, mix it down yourself, but now you're really starting to get into the fine line between sound quality at a studio and sound quality in your basement. You know, one of the most interesting things about recording studios is, of course, the gear. So historically, the recording studios are going to have better gear. I'm talking like Neve consoles, SSLs. We used to have to recap the boards, which is actually like soldering on new capacitors to get the sound quality to be the best you can. Now, you obviously don't do that every single day. It's things that you do after X amount of years. But another argument within this realm is analog stuff sounds so much better than digital stuff, and the stuff in the studio cannot be replicated by the stuff in your parents' basement. Is that really true? I mean, it was in 2003, but now in 2015, things are getting kind of tight. There's a guitar effects out there by Fractal Audio called the Axe Effects, and a lot of you guys probably watching this are going like, Axe Effects, because it really changed the way a lot of guitarists approach digital stuff, and I think it's also really shaken up the recording world too. The Axe Effects, basically all it is a digital amp, but it's not actually an amplifier, it's like a computer. It has DSP, digital sound processors, within the device. So you plug your guitar in, you plug that thing into the recording board, and you can make it sound like anything. You can make it sound like an acoustic guitar, you can make it sound like a 5150 cranked up in Eddie Van Halen's heyday, for all you care. You know, you can make it do whatever you want. And all the effects are built right in. And the thing roughly costs the same as a mid to high end amplifier. So I could buy a Mesa Mark V for $2,500, and I still need to buy the speakers, you know. Or I could buy this Axe Effects. Things like that make me think that the gap is narrowing. So this is a little bit of Dave mind, just things that I think about, and things perhaps you'll think about too. To recap a little bit of this, obviously people in a professional studio are going to have professional skills. They're going to be well versed and very experienced with what they do. But on the flip side, perhaps as a musician, it's best to learn that stuff yourself. So instead of spending the money to go to a recording studio, why don't you just spend the money on the gear and learn to do it right in your parents' basement? Obviously, it might not sound very good when you first start. You have to learn the skills to do it. Mic placement, how to put in certain effects, how to record certain compression, even how to use the software. In other words, the stuff I learned at the venue when I was wasting my time as a 19-year-old kid is the stuff that I think is valuable to a musician and valuable to people recording. It's kind of sad to see the recording studios around the world closing because they really just can't compete with what I'm telling you, the mindset that musicians can afford to have unlimited takes and learn their own gear in their own house when they used to have to go out and record in a studio. But having said this, don't lose the mindset that out there are professionals who do a really, really good job. Is home recording killing recorded music? I don't think so. But is recording studio recorded music actually better than home recording? I don't think so either. I'm Dave, and this is my mind. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. We'll have to just see what comes next. Thanks for watching.